Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Parallel Deku. Back with another fanfiction. This is the movie of What if Deku chose love over heroism? Now before starting, please give this video a like. And subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Deku walked down the street, feeling a heavy weight in his chest. His eyes were puffy, and his cheeks were stained with tears. He had just discovered that his boyfriend was cheating on him with Momo. Earlier, he had been excited to visit his boyfriend's house, hoping for a fun sleepover since his mother was away. Upon arriving, he found the front door wide open, which he initially dismissed as a result of the heat. However, when he entered and approached his boyfriend's room, he heard sounds that shattered his heart. Through the slightly ajar door, he saw his boyfriend with Momo, and he couldn't bear to witness the betrayal. Overwhelmed, he had run away, seeking solace far from that painful scene. Now, as he walked alone, tears streamed down his face, replaying the heart-wrenching images in his mind. The sky was dimming, signaling the approach of night. Just as he began to head home, he accidentally bumped into someone. It was Katsuki, who immediately noticed his distress and growled, demanding to know why he was crying. When Deku hesitated, Katsuki pressed further, suspecting it was about Todoroki. Unable to hold back, Deku fell to his knees, tears flowing freely as he tried to wipe his cheeks, but his efforts were in vain. Katsuki felt a surge of regret for causing Deku's pain. He had known about Todoroki's infidelity but had not wanted to hurt Deku further. In a moment of instinct, he knelt beside Deku and pulled him into a comforting embrace. He felt Deku's arms wrap around him as he continued to cry, and he reassured him that he had done nothing wrong. It was Todoroki who had betrayed him. When Deku questioned why Katsuki cared, Katsuki realized that he had deep feelings for Deku, feelings he had struggled to express. Determined to show his affection, Katsuki proposed a challenge. Deku could hit him if he disliked what was about to happen. Without waiting for a response, he cupped Deku's face and kissed him. After a brief moment, he pulled away, counting down the seconds. When Deku did not retaliate, Katsuki kissed him again, this time more passionately. To his surprise, Deku kissed him back, and the tears began to dry. Katsuki held Deku tightly, confessing his love and apologizing for his past behavior. He promised to treat him better than Todoroki ever could. Deku quietly admitted that he loved Katsuki too, and a sense of relief washed over Katsuki. They decided to go to Katsuki's house, where his parents were not home. Once they arrived, they removed their shoes and headed to Katsuki's room. Deku yawned, and Katsuki suggested they sleep, knowing that Monday would come too soon. He offered Deku a pair of sweatpants, concerned that he wouldn't want to sleep in jeans. Deku appreciated the gesture, though he hesitated to change in front of Katsuki. Katsuki turned away, allowing Deku some privacy. After a moment, he heard the sound of clothing being changed and turned back to see Deku in the sweatpants. With the day winding down, they climbed into bed together. Katsuki wrapped his arms around Deku, who nestled against his chest. Soon, the sound of light snores filled the room, and Katsuki smiled, feeling content as he drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Deku awoke beside Katsuki, who looked peaceful and relaxed. He gently touched Katsuki's cheek, causing him to stir. When Katsuki checked the time, he realized they had only 20 minutes left to get to school. Deku quickly got out of bed, knowing he needed to return home for his uniform. They agreed to meet at the school gate. After rushing home and changing, Deku made his way back to school. However, he was stopped just before reaching the gate by none other than Shoto Todoroki. When Todoroki attempted to engage him, Deku firmly told him to leave. The confrontation escalated, and Deku revealed that he had seen Todoroki with Momo. Tears streamed down his face as he declared that he wanted nothing to do with Todoroki anymore. Just then, Katsuki arrived, assessing the situation. He immediately sensed the tension and turned his attention to Deku, ready to support him in this difficult moment. Katsuki wrapped his arm around Izuku's waist, pulling him closer. He firmly instructed someone to leave Izuku alone, asserting that Izuku was his boyfriend. When the other person attempted to pull Izuku away, Izuku instinctively wrapped his arms around Katsuki and buried his face in his chest. Katsuki dismissed the other person with disdain, and Izuku could hear a growl from Todoroki as he began to walk away, muttering insults. Katsuki held Izuku tightly, defending him against the accusations being thrown around. He then told Izuku it was time to go home, emphasizing that he didn't need the drama. Izuku's eyes widened in surprise. Katsuki had called him by his first name, making him feel special and warm inside. He nodded in agreement and began to walk alongside Katsuki, still hugging him. Katsuki chuckled and playfully walked backward, urging Izuku to hurry up. Izuku felt grateful for Katsuki's support. The day had been particularly stressful for Izuku. He had faced a surprise test and had to confront his bully during physical education, who had not gone easy on him. As he walked back to the dorms, he heard Katsuki call out to him. Turning around, he saw his childhood friend, Katsuki Bakudeku, who had changed since gaining his quirk. Izuku felt a mix of fear and anticipation as Katsuki approached him, expressing a need for help. Before Izuku could respond, a girl interrupted, calling out to Katsuki and asking him to go out with her. Izuku's heart sank. He had harbored feelings for Katsuki since middle school, even during the times he had been bullied. Katsuki firmly rejected the girl, stating that he had a boyfriend and that Izuku was right behind him. Both Izuku and the girl were taken aback by this revelation. The girl demanded proof, insisting that Katsuki kiss Izuku if it were true. Suddenly, Katsuki pressed his lips against Izuku's, leaving him stunned. Izuku felt a rush of warmth and softness, and despite his confusion, he found himself kissing back. When the kiss ended, tears welled up in Izuku's eyes as he turned away, unable to face either Katsuki or the girl. Katsuki reiterated that Izuku was his boyfriend, and the girl, frustrated, ran off. Katsuki chuckled at the situation, but Izuku pushed him away, feeling betrayed and hurt. He yelled that he hated Katsuki and ran to his dorm room, locking the door behind him. Overwhelmed, he collapsed onto his bed, wrapped himself in blankets, and fell asleep, feeling the weight of his emotions. Katsuki watched Izuku flee, feeling a pang of regret. He had not intended for things to escalate this way, especially since he had planned to confess his feelings to Izuku after the incident. Now, he was left wondering how to apologize and express his love. After a moment of contemplation, he decided to check on Izuku, realizing he had acted thoughtlessly. He changed into comfortable clothes and made his way to Izuku's room, knocking on the door. When there was no response, he knocked again, harder this time. Finally, he heard footsteps approaching, and the door opened to reveal a visibly upset Izuku. His eyes were puffy and red, and his hair was disheveled. Katsuki asked if he could talk to Izuku, trying to maintain a calm demeanor. Izuku hesitated but eventually stepped aside to let Katsuki in. The room was sparsely decorated, with a desk cluttered with school supplies and a bed that looked like it had seen better days. Katsuki felt a rush of emotions as he noticed how worn out Izuku appeared. He quickly addressed the earlier incident, his heart racing. Izuku's voice trembled as he asked if the kiss had been fake. Katsuki felt a surge of frustration at the thought that Izuku might believe that. He firmly denied it, insisting that he would not kiss Izuku just for show. Izuku's anger flared as he accused Katsuki of using him for his own benefit, recalling past instances where Katsuki had treated him poorly. Katsuki clenched his fists, feeling defensive. He tried to explain that he had confided in Kirishima out of guilt, not to boast. He had been struggling with his feelings for Izuku and had wanted to find the courage to ask him out. The tension between them was palpable as they confronted their emotions, each grappling with their past and the complexities of their relationship. Since the moment they met, there had always been an unspoken connection between them, though it had been marred by misunderstandings and hurtful actions. The feelings that had once manifested as aggression were now transformed into a desperate plea for forgiveness and a chance at something more. The one who had caused so much pain now found himself vulnerable, expressing a deep regret for his past behavior. He acknowledged the fear he had instilled and the pain he had caused, and he earnestly sought another opportunity to prove himself. He promised to cherish, protect, and love the other, hoping for a chance to make amends. As he poured his heart out, tears streamed down his face, and he felt the warmth of arms wrapping around him, offering comfort. In that moment, he found solace, resting his head against a shoulder, feeling a connection that had long been absent. The request for his name was met with a tender response, and the air was thick with emotion as they both acknowledged their feelings. The one who had been hurt felt a wave of relief wash over him, realizing that the love he had always felt was reciprocated. The atmosphere shifted as they shared a kiss, a moment that was both electrifying and tender. It was a kiss filled with passion and warmth, a culmination of their struggles and the love that had blossomed despite the odds. As they pulled away, the world around them faded, leaving only the two of them in their shared moment of vulnerability. The one who had been hurt marveled at the beauty of the other, feeling a sense of awe at the depth of their connection. In the aftermath of their kiss, they found themselves enveloped in a warm embrace, sharing whispered declarations of love. The bond they had forged was stronger than ever, and the promise of a future together filled them with hope. They shared laughter and light-hearted moments, their joy palpable as they navigated this new chapter of their relationship. However, their bliss was interrupted by an unexpected call from a friend, reminding them of the outside world. The sudden intrusion brought a mix of embarrassment and excitement, as they realized they would need to navigate their new relationship in the presence of others. The one who had caused pain was unapologetic about their bond, teasingly pointing out the marks of their affection, which only deepened the blush on the other's cheeks. As they made their way to the common room, the atmosphere was charged with curiosity and surprise from their classmates. The revelation of their relationship sparked a flurry of reactions, leaving them both flustered yet exhilarated. They quickly retreated to the safety of one's dorm room, laughter echoing in the space as they caught their breath and processed the whirlwind of emotions. In the quiet of the room, they found comfort in each other's presence, sharing moments of laughter and tenderness. As the night wore on, they discussed their plans for the future, both eager to explore the possibilities that lay ahead. The one who had once been unsure now felt a sense of clarity, knowing that they wanted to be together, to support one another through whatever challenges might come. As they settled in for the night, one of them suggested they spend the night together, and the other, though initially shy, agreed. They nestled close, sharing warmth and comfort, drifting off to sleep with whispered words of love. The world outside faded away, leaving only the two of them in their own little bubble of happiness. Meanwhile, their classmates were left in a state of disbelief, trying to comprehend how two individuals who had once been at odds could find love in each other. The unexpected turn of events had left everyone buzzing with curiosity, eager to see how this new relationship would unfold. In the days that followed, one of them prepared to confess his feelings to his childhood friend, hoping that the bond they had formed would only grow stronger. As he approached the dorm, he was momentarily distracted by a strange encounter with a lookalike, but his heart was set on the one who had captured his affection. The journey ahead was filled with promise, and he was ready to embrace whatever came next. Katsuki was aware that he was in a different timeline, one where quirks existed. He found himself in a dorm building, and the atmosphere felt strange yet familiar. He had a sense of urgency to understand his surroundings and the person he was with. The other boy, who he recognized as Deku, seemed hesitant and nervous. Katsuki could sense that their relationship had changed over time, and he was determined to get answers. Deku explained that they used to be friends, but things had soured as time went on. Katsuki felt a growl of frustration rise within him as he listened to Deku's words. The tension in the room was palpable, and he wanted to know what had caused their friendship to deteriorate. Deku admitted that Katsuki had hurt him, and they were no longer friends in this timeline. This revelation struck Katsuki hard, and he felt a mix of confusion and anger. As they settled in for the night, Katsuki suggested they sleep, and Deku agreed. The two of them shared a bed, and as they lay there, Katsuki noticed Deku's restless state. He could hear Deku's soft gasps and sobs, which stirred something protective within him. He wanted to comfort Deku, to ease whatever turmoil was plaguing him. When Deku suddenly gasped and sat up, clutching his heart, Katsuki instinctively reached out to him. He wrapped his arms around Deku, offering the kind of comfort he would have given his own Deku in his timeline. Deku responded immediately, seeking solace in Katsuki's embrace. As the night wore on, Katsuki found himself drawn to Deku in a way he hadn't anticipated. He felt a connection that transcended their complicated history. In the quiet of the night as they lay together, Katsuki's thoughts were a whirlwind of emotions. He wanted to understand this version of Deku, to bridge the gap that had formed between them. The weight of their past hung heavily in the air, but there was also a glimmer of hope for a new beginning. As they drifted into sleep, Katsuki resolved to protect this Deku and find a way to mend what had been broken. The next morning, Katsuki awoke to find Deku still asleep beside him. He watched as the sunlight filtered through the window, casting a warm glow over Deku's peaceful face. Katsuki felt a surge of determination. He wanted to make things right. He knew that their paths had diverged, but he was willing to fight for a chance to rebuild their friendship. As the day unfolded, Katsuki and Deku navigated their new reality together. They faced challenges and uncertainties, but there was an undeniable bond forming between them. Katsuki was determined to show Deku that he could be different, that he could be the friend he once was and more. With each passing moment, they began to understand each other better, slowly unraveling the complexities of their relationship. Katsuki knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but he was ready to face it alongside Deku. Together, they would confront their past and forge a new future, one where they could support each other and grow stronger together. The possibilities were endless, and for the first time in a long while, Katsuki felt hopeful about what lay ahead. Deku appeared to be lost in thought, his expression a mix of confusion and distress. He seemed overwhelmed, tears welling in his eyes as he looked at Katsuki. Katsuki, noticing the turmoil, felt a surge of frustration and concern. He wanted to reassure Deku, to let him know that everything would be okay. As he reached out, he could see the fear in Deku's eyes, which only deepened his resolve to comfort him. In a moment of vulnerability, Deku opened up about his feelings. He had been caught off guard by the sudden turn of events, and the weight of his emotions was heavy on his heart. Katsuki, feeling a mix of sympathy and affection, pulled Deku closer, wrapping his arms around him in a protective embrace. He expressed that he was not angry and that he had intended to confess his feelings to Deku before everything had spiraled out of control. The confession hung in the air, and Deku's heart raced as he processed Katsuki's words. Katsuki's admission brought a wave of relief to Deku, who felt a rush of emotions. He had longed for this moment, and now that it was here, he couldn't help but feel a mix of joy and regret. He apologized for the circumstances that had led to this confusion, but Katsuki silenced him with a gentle gesture, indicating that everything was all right. They shared a tender moment, and as they lay together, the weight of their feelings began to lift. As they settled into a comfortable silence, the two of them drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other's warmth. Meanwhile, outside their room, their friends were unaware of the peaceful scene unfolding. Kirishima and Shiro were discussing their plans, oblivious to the emotional journey taking place just a few doors down. The next day arrived, and Katsuki, filled with determination, woke Deku with an unexpected burst of energy. He urged Deku to get ready, insisting they had plans for the day. Deku, still groggy and reluctant to leave the comfort of his bed, complied, knowing that Katsuki would not take no for an answer. He quickly changed into a comfortable outfit, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension about what the day would hold. When he opened the door, he found Katsuki waiting impatiently, dressed casually yet stylishly. Katsuki's presence was commanding, and despite the initial nerves, Deku felt a flutter of anticipation. As they made their way to the elevator, Katsuki's demeanor shifted from impatience to something softer, a hint of affection hidden behind his tough exterior. Once they arrived at their destination, the bustling atmosphere of the festival enveloped them. Deku's eyes lit up with excitement, and Katsuki couldn't help but feel a sense of pride at seeing his friends so happy. They navigated the crowds, and despite Katsuki's usual gruffness, he found himself wanting to make the day special for Deku. As they stood in line for the festival, Katsuki struggled with his emotions. He wanted to hold Deku's hand, to show him how much he cared, but the fear of appearing vulnerable held him back. When Deku noticed Katsuki's intense gaze, he felt a mix of concern and curiosity, prompting him to ask if something was wrong. Katsuki, caught off guard, snapped back with a teasing remark, but deep down he appreciated Deku's unwavering spirit. Once inside the festival, Deku's enthusiasm was infectious. He eagerly pointed out the rides and games, his excitement palpable. Katsuki, despite his usual tough demeanor, felt a warmth in his chest at the sight of Deku's joy. He realized that moments like these were precious and that he wanted to create more memories together. As they enjoyed the day, Katsuki made a silent vow to himself to be more open with Deku, to let him know how much he meant to him. The festival was just the beginning of their journey together, and as they shared laughter and thrills, both boys knew that their bond was growing stronger with each passing moment. The excitement in the air was palpable as they rushed toward the roller coaster. With a firm grip on his hand, she pulled him along, noticing that he didn't pull away. Once they boarded the ride, his initial fear transformed into laughter, and seeing him so happy warmed her heart. It was a joy to witness his smile again. As they enjoyed the thrill of the rides, he felt exhilarated. They had experienced nearly every roller coaster, each one more thrilling than the last. His friend had been surprisingly kind, even if he occasionally raised his voice. This behavior was endearing, and it deepened his affection for him. However, he couldn't shake the feeling that his friend was trying to compensate for their past in middle school. He hoped that wasn't the case. Suddenly, his stomach growled, causing him to blush and look away. His friend chuckled and asked if he was hungry. He wondered if his friend had been affected by a quirk, but he nodded in response. His friend suggested a new cafe he had visited, claiming it was excellent and that he would enjoy it. The sight of his genuine smile filled him with warmth. Upon arriving at the cafe, they were seated at a table by the window, providing a perfect view of the sunset. The waitress approached, inquiring about their drink preferences. His friend ordered water, while he chose sweet tea. The waitress complimented them as a cute couple, causing both of them to blush. He quickly focused on the menu, spotting a dish that made him smile widely. His friend noticed him drooling over the menu and teased him, prompting him to apologize while sheepishly wiping his mouth. The waitress returned with their drinks, and they placed their food orders. As they waited, he sensed something was troubling his friend. When asked, his friend confessed to feeling remorseful for past actions, admitting to having treated him poorly out of confusion about his feelings. He expressed how he thought he could move on but found himself unable to forget him. He revealed that he thought of him constantly, cherishing his smile and the freckles that adorned his face. He lamented breaking a promise made long ago, feeling guilty for not being there for him. Tears welled in his friend's eyes, but a smile remained on his face as he confessed his own feelings. He had always loved him and had never considered choosing anyone else. He revealed that he had kept the promise ring his friend had given him, recalling the pain of their past but admitting that he could never hate him. The atmosphere was charged with emotion as they acknowledged their feelings for one another. His friend asked if he would be his boyfriend, and he felt a rush of happiness. They shared a meal filled with laughter and conversation, both of them smiling throughout. After a playful debate over who would pay, he ended up covering the bill. Hand in hand, they walked back to their dorms, stopping a block away. He pulled his friend into a warm embrace, promising to treat him right from then on. He whispered sweetly in his ear, vowing to make him feel cherished. As they leaned in, their lips met in a passionate kiss, a moment they had both longed for. When they finally pulled away, both were flushed with happiness. They exchanged declarations of love, and he playfully suggested they avoid trouble on their way back. With a giggle, his friend took off running, and they raced back, ending in a tie. Once they caught their breath, his friend asked if he could sleep over, to which he enthusiastically agreed. That night felt like the best of his life. Years passed, and he reflected on how much had changed since graduating from UA. Despite not becoming a pro hero, life had taken an unexpected turn when his childhood friend had gotten him PRGNT after graduation. The memories flooded back as he recalled his visit to the doctor, feeling overwhelmed by the news. For the past few weeks, the protagonist had been feeling unwell, experiencing nausea, lightheadedness, and mood swings. Concerned about her health, she decided to visit the doctor. Upon arrival, the doctor delivered surprising news. She was PRGNT, 3 weeks along. Overwhelmed with a mix of happiness and despair, she felt as though she had failed the expectations of her mentor, All Might, and worried about how her friend, Katsuki Bakudeku, would react. Unsure of what to do, she left the hospital with a sonogram picture of the baby, determined to speak with All Might first. Finding him, she requested a private conversation. Once alone, she shared her situation, and All Might listened intently, expressing his understanding and support. He reassured her that it was okay to feel scared and encouraged her to consider how Bakugo might react positively to the news. After some contemplation, she decided to seek out Bakugo, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. As she approached his dorm, she noticed the door slightly ajar and peered inside, only to witness a scene that shattered her heart. Bakugo was kissing another girl, Uraraka. Stunned and unable to move, she gasped, drawing their attention. Bakugo opened the door, and their eyes met, but she was too emotional to speak. With tears streaming down her face, she apologized for intruding and excused herself, stating she needed to prepare for graduation. Despite his attempts to say something, she left, feeling lost and lightheaded. In the days that followed, she found solace in her growing family. She gave Bardh to twin daughters, Kimi and Kumi, who were both blonde. Kimi resembled her father with her fiery personality and inherited his quirk, while Kumi had her mother's green eyes and a more powerful version of her quirk, capable of levitating larger objects. The twins brought immense joy to her life, and as they prepared for a party at UA, she felt a mix of excitement and nostalgia. Her boyfriend, Eijiro Kirishima, entered the room, admiring her in a mint green dress that accentuated her curves. He complimented her beauty, and she reciprocated, sharing a tender moment before their daughters interrupted with playful banter about their own crushes. The family hurried to the car, eager to join their friends at the event. Upon arriving at the venue, they were greeted by familiar faces from Class 1A and some from Class 1B. Kimi climbed onto Eijiro's back, while Kumi held her mother's hand. The twins spotted their friends and dashed off to play, leaving the adults to mingle. Suddenly, Mina called out, drawing attention to the protagonist. Feeling shy, she hid behind Eijiro, but he proudly announced her presence, eliciting cheers and questions from their classmates. Kimi, protective of her mother, stepped forward, activating her quirk slightly, which caused the other girls to back off in surprise. The twins quickly became the center of attention, and the protagonist felt a swell of pride as her friends admired her daughters. However, when someone asked about the father, the truth about Bakugo's role in her life came to light, leading to a dramatic revelation that left everyone in shock. The protagonist braced herself for the fallout, knowing that the past would soon catch up with her. Izuku stood with a heavy heart, feeling the weight of betrayal as he confronted his past. The dark air around him thickened as he glared at Bakugo, who had caused him so much pain. The revelation of Bakugo's infidelity with Uraraka had left him reeling. The shockwaves of the confession rippled through their group of friends, eliciting gasps and murmurs of disbelief. Bakugo admitted his wrongdoing, expressing regret, but Izuku felt the sting of those words. He had endured years of suffering because of Bakugo's actions, losing hope in his dream of becoming the #1 hero. If it hadn't been for Eijiro, who had stood by him through the darkest times, he might not have made it. The anger surged within him as he recalled how Bakugo had failed to reach out during those years, too preoccupied with his own life to notice Izuku's struggles. As the tension in the air escalated, Eijiro suggested they leave, and Izuku nodded in agreement. The girls rushed to him, asking if they could stay in touch. He smiled and instructed them to ask Eijiro for his contact information before making his way out. Just as he was about to leave, someone grabbed his wrist, halting him in his tracks. Eijiro appeared nervous yet excited, asking if he could do something before they departed. Izuku agreed to wait in the car with the twins, but Eijiro insisted it involved him. After a moment of hesitation, Eijiro got down on one knee, pulling out a small box. Izuku's heart raced as he wondered if this was a proposal. Eijiro expressed his anger over Bakugo's betrayal and how he had promised to treat Izuku better. After 12 years together, Eijiro finally asked if Izuku would marry him. The crowd gasped, and Izuku felt tears welling up in his eyes. Overwhelmed with joy, he fell to his knees and embraced Eijiro, affirming his acceptance of the proposal. The atmosphere shifted to one of celebration as everyone clapped and congratulated them. In that moment, Izuku felt a profound love for Eijiro, who gently wiped away his tears. However, their happiness was abruptly interrupted by an explosion. Bakudeku appeared, furious and ready to confront them. He demanded to know why Izuku was with Ijiro, accusing him of being weak. Izuku stood tall, confronting Bakudeku with a fierce determination. He reminded Bakudeku of the pain he had inflicted, the chances he had squandered, and how he had tried to tear Izuku down. With every word, Izuku declared his newfound strength and identity as a Kirishima, no longer a Baku. He made it clear that he was moving on, planning a future with Ijiro and their children, and that Bakudeku was no longer welcome in his life. With that, they left, leaving Bakudeku behind in a cloud of anger and regret. As they drove home, Ijiro praised Izuku for his courage, causing a blush to spread across Izuku's cheeks. Once home, they tucked the twins into bed and settled into the living room, wrapped in each other's arms. Ijiro expressed his excitement about calling Izuku his wife, and Izuku eagerly anticipated calling Ijiro his husband. Their kisses were tender and filled with love, igniting butterflies in Izuku's stomach. On the day of the wedding, Izuku felt a mix of nerves and excitement. His mother reassured him, reminding him of the love Ijiro held for him. As the bells rang, Denki walked him down the aisle, and there stood Ijiro, looking handsome in his suit. Izuku's heart swelled with emotion as they exchanged loving glances. When it was time for the vows, Ijiro declared his commitment, and when the officiant turned to Izuku, he affirmed his love with a teary-eyed, "I do." The moment was perfect, sealing their bond in front of friends and family, ready to embark on their new life together. The ceremony was appealing, filled with love and joy. As the officiant announced that the couple could share their first kiss as a married pair, Ai leaned in and kissed his partner with deep passion. It was a moment they both wished could last forever. Following the kiss, they celebrated with toasts and the traditional cake cutting. In a playful moment, Ei's partner grabbed a handful of cake and playfully smeared it on Ei's face, who quickly retaliated in kind. They then hopped into their car, excitement bubbling as they set off for their honeymoon by the ocean, where they engaged in various activities and enjoyed long conversations at a cozy cafe. Time passed, and a significant moment arrived. Ei's partner stared at the PRGNCY test in disbelief. It was positive. A wave of anxiety washed over them as they considered how Ei would react. Ei, sensing something was amiss, called out from the other side of the door, asking what the test result was. Overwhelmed with emotion, Ei's partner began to cry. Ei rushed in, alarmed, and upon seeing the test, his face lit up with joy. He couldn't believe the news and lifted his partner in excitement, expressing his happiness. The moment was abruptly interrupted by loud banging on the front door, leaving them both in suspense. As the story continued, the focus shifted to a different setting. A group of friends was in a gym, and the atmosphere was tense. One member of the group, Izuku, was trying to avoid the wrath of his friend Katsuki, who was in a particularly foul mood. Izuku felt a headache coming on from all the shouting and decided to seek help from their teacher, Aizawa, claiming he felt unwell. Aizawa, slightly surprised, allowed him to leave for a moment of rest. Meanwhile, Katsuki was bewildered by Izuku's sudden change in demeanor, particularly his use of strong language. The group speculated about Katsuki's feelings for Izuku, leading to a mix of teasing and surprise among their friends. As the day went on, Katsuki found himself unable to concentrate on his homework, thoughts of Izuku invading his mind. He felt the pressure to confess his feelings before someone else could take Izuku away. Determined, Katsuki made his way to Izuku's room, knocking on the door with urgency. When Izuku opened it, he greeted Katsuki with a smile, but the atmosphere was tense. Katsuki struggled to find the right words to express his feelings, feeling frustrated and overwhelmed. Izuku, sensing Katsuki's distress, encouraged him to take his time. Katsuki described the person he had feelings for, revealing details that pointed directly to Izuku himself, though he remained unaware of the impact his words had on his friend. As the conversation unfolded, the tension between them grew palpable. Katsuki, in a moment of boldness, leaned in and kissed Izuku. The kiss was intense and filled with emotion, catching Izuku by surprise. They both melted into the moment, their feelings finally surfacing in a way that changed everything between them. The kiss lingered, marking a new chapter in their relationship, filled with hope and uncertainty about what lay ahead. As Izuku struggled to catch his breath, Katsuki pulled him into a warm embrace, nuzzling his nose against Izuku's neck. Noticing the flush on Katsuki's ears, Izuku smiled and pressed a gentle kiss to his neck, feeling Katsuki shiver in response. Izuku whispered his affection, feeling a rush of warmth as Katsuki nestled closer. Katsuki teased about taking things further if Izuku continued to be adorable, prompting a startled reaction from Izuku, who pulled back in surprise. Katsuki's laughter filled the air, a sound that made Izuku smile even more. They shared a tender moment, with Katsuki assuring Izuku that he wouldn't push him unless it was what he wanted. As fatigue washed over Izuku, he nodded when Katsuki asked if he was tired. Katsuki took his hand and led him to his bed, where they settled under the covers, cuddling closely. Their hearts were full as they exchanged soft declarations of love, with Izuku snuggling deeper into Katsuki's chest. In another moment, Izuku found himself reflecting on his difficult home life. Memories of harsh words from his mother echoed in his mind, leaving him feeling worthless and unloved. Since he was 10, her cruel remarks had become a painful routine, yet he still held on to love for her despite the hurt. As he prepared for school, he felt the weight of despair pressing down on him. After a long run, he collapsed at an old park where he used to play, tears streaming down his face as he grappled with feelings of isolation and hopelessness. Just as he felt overwhelmed by his emotions, he sensed someone patting his back, causing him to flinch and look back. Katsuki, having woken early for a jog, recognized the familiar park where he and Izuku had spent time as children. Spotting Izuku in distress, he rushed over, concerned for his friend. As he knelt beside Izuku, he noticed the signs of a panic attack and instinctively began to comfort him. When Izuku finally acknowledged his presence, Katsuki inquired about his tears, wanting to understand what was troubling him. Izuku hesitated, offering a vague explanation about needing to think. Katsuki sensed something deeper was troubling him but chose not to press further, wanting to avoid making Izuku feel worse. After a brief exchange, Katsuki suggested they head to the dorms, but Izuku hesitated, revealing he didn't have his ID to get in. Katsuki felt frustrated but decided to let it go, wishing Izuku well as he walked away. Later, during class, Katsuki noticed Izuku struggling to stay awake. When their teacher, Aizawa, called on Izuku, he quickly responded, but it was clear he was exhausted. After class, Aizawa asked to speak with him during lunch, and Katsuki, curious about what was happening, decided to stay hidden nearby. He overheard Aizawa questioning Izuku about his lack of sleep, and the revelation that Izuku was only getting 2 hours a night shocked him. Katsuki's concern grew as he listened to Izuku deflect questions about his home life, sensing that something was seriously wrong. After the conversation, Katsuki hurried to avoid being seen. He soon spotted Izuku again, who looked pale and on the verge of collapsing. Without hesitation, Katsuki caught him and carried him to the recovery room. There, Recovery Girl examined Izuku, noting his severe exhaustion and numerous bruises, which left both Katsuki and Aizawa in shock. Recovery Girl turned to Katsuki, asking if he knew what was happening at Izuku's home. Katsuki admitted that Izuku rarely spoke about his family, leaving him frustrated and worried. As they waited for Izuku to wake up, Katsuki felt a surge of determination to help his friend, realizing that he could no longer ignore the pain Izuku was enduring. When Izuku finally stirred, he looked around in confusion, unaware of the concern that surrounded him. Katsuki quickly pointed out that Izuku had fainted. Izuku, feeling embarrassed, apologized for causing concern, insisting that he was fine and had simply been studying too much. Aizawa, in his usual lazy yet serious manner, indicated that they needed to discuss something important with Izuku. Recovery Girl then inquired about the bruises visible on his body, expressing her concern for his well-being. CK decided to continue the conversation. Izuku felt overwhelmed and anxious, unsure of what to say. He sensed that his friends had noticed his distress. Kaken reassured him, suggesting that he didn't have to share everything immediately. The adults present nodded in agreement, and Aizawa offered a solution. He proposed that Izuku choose one person to confide in while the others stepped out. Izuku contemplated his options, weighing his trust in Kaken against Aizawa's role as a hero who could help him. Ultimately, he chose Kaken, prompting Aizawa and Recovery Girl to leave the room. Katsuki felt a surge of pride when Izuku chose him, interpreting it as a sign of trust. He encouraged Izuku to take his time, allowing him to share his feelings at his own pace. As Izuku began to speak, tears welled in his eyes. He revealed that when his father discovered he was quirkless, he abandoned the family without a word, plunging his mother into a deep depression. This led to her struggles with alcohol and financial difficulties, which only worsened over time. The weight of his mother's actions became evident as Izuku recounted the physical and emotional abuse he endured. Katsuki held Izuku tightly, offering comfort as he cried. He felt a surge of anger toward Izuku's mother for the pain she inflicted. Izuku expressed his feelings of helplessness and despair, detailing how his mother had evicted him from their home. Katsuki's heart ached for him, and he vowed to protect Izuku, promising to be his hero. As Izuku's tears continued to flow, he expressed his fear of losing Katsuki again. Katsuki reassured him, sealing their promise with a pinky swear. Izuku confessed his love, and Katsuki reciprocated, feeling a warmth spread through him. They decided to inform their teachers about the situation. Katsuki explained everything while holding Izuku close, and Aizawa assured them that they had enough evidence to take action against Izuku's mother. Later that evening, they returned to Izuku's home, where the atmosphere was heavy with the smell of alcohol. Katsuki confronted Izuku's mother, declaring that her actions would have consequences. Just as she began to protest, the police arrived, arresting her for her crimes. Izuku stood in shock, and when he finally processed what had happened, he embraced Katsuki, calling him his hero and expressing his gratitude. From that day forward, Katsuki dedicated himself to caring for Izuku, showering him with love and support. They shared joyful moments together, from their wedding day to the excitement of adopting twins. Their bond remained strong, enduring even beyond their time together. The end. Deku sat in his room, feeling the weight of his emotions crash down on him. He had been struggling with his feelings for a while, especially after the recent exams when he noticed how close his friends had become. The pain of rejection was evident in his scratchy voice as he admitted to himself that Kaken had given up on him. Just then Yururika, his best friend, entered the room, catching him off guard. She noticed the petals scattered around him and asked if they were from him. With a heavy heart, he nodded, realizing he could no longer keep this secret to himself. He revealed that Kaken had given up on him, his voice breaking but a small, forced smile still on his face. Yururika rushed to him, enveloping him in a comforting hug as he broke down in tears. Deku lamented his choices, wondering why he hadn't followed his instincts and confronted Kaken sooner. As he cried, he eventually fell asleep in Yururika's embrace. She gently used her quirk to lift him into bed, tucking him in before kissing his forehead and quietly leaving the room. Meanwhile, Yururika felt a surge of anger towards those who had hurt Deku. She made her way to the common area, where she spotted Bakudeku and Todoroki, the two individuals she held responsible for Deku's pain. When Kirishima asked about Deku's whereabouts, she feigned cheerfulness, stating that he was asleep and needed space, especially from Bakudeku and Todoroki. Yururika sat down next to them, her mind racing with thoughts of revenge. She addressed Bakudeku and Todoroki with barely contained fury, demanding to know why they were betraying Deku. The tension in the air was palpable as she warned them that Deku had heard their conversations and that their actions had consequences. She made it clear that if they didn't leave Deku alone, she would expose Bakugu's infidelity. Bakudeku, trying to maintain his composure, asked what she wanted. Yururika firmly instructed him to leave Deku alone, threatening to convince Deku to cut ties with him if he didn't comply. After a moment of silence, Bakudeku reluctantly agreed and inquired if Deku was in his room. Yururika confirmed he was, and as they made their way to Deku's room, she felt a mix of anticipation and dread. Upon reaching the door, Bakudeku knocked, and Deku's hesitant voice responded, inviting them in. The atmosphere shifted as Bakudeku confronted Deku, stating that he was breaking up with him. Deku's heart shattered at the words, and he struggled to suppress the flowers that threatened to emerge from his chest. He felt defeated but knew he had to let go for the sake of everyone involved. Deku expressed his longing for Bakugo to leave, stating that he didn't want to see him again. Bakugo, taken aback, insulted Deku, revealing his true intentions. In a moment of clarity, Deku stood firm, reminding Bakugo of the pain he had caused. As Bakugo stormed out, Deku felt the petals begin to rise, a painful reminder of his heartbreak. Just then, Uraraka returned, wrapping her arms around him in a gentle embrace. Her presence brought him comfort, and as he calmed down, she confessed her long-held feelings for him. Overwhelmed with emotion, Deku smiled and accepted her proposal to be his girlfriend. Uraraka's joy illuminated the room, and as they shared their first kiss, Deku realized that he had found his true soulmate in her. In that moment, he felt a sense of relief wash over him, knowing that he was finally loved for who he was. The pain of the past began to fade, replaced by the warmth of a new beginning. The two of them stood by the door, listening to the persistent banging that had started and stopped several times. Izuku glanced at Ei, who decided to check the commotion. He approached the door, taking a deep breath before opening it, blocking Izuku's view of the visitor. Ei greeted Mrs. Bakugo, who inquired about Izuku's whereabouts, expressing a need to speak with her. Izuku felt a wave of anxiety wash over her as she remembered their last encounter, where Mrs. Bakugo had accused her of cheating on her son and made hurtful comments about her appearance. Izuku had no idea what Katsuki had told his mother, but she remembered the sight of him with a black eye after a confrontation with Ei. Ei informed Mrs. Bakugo that Izuku was not home, as she had gone to work. Mrs. Bakugo then requested an item that belonged to Katsuki, something he wanted back for his fiancée. Izuku cringed at the mention of the bracelet, feeling sympathy for Mrs. Bakugo. Ei asked what the item was, and upon learning it was a bracelet with a red ruby and black diamonds, he nodded and asked her to wait outside while he retrieved it. Izuku had the bracelet ready in her hands and shared a brief, sweet kiss with Ei before he returned to the door and handed it to Mrs. Bakugo. She thanked him, but her parting words were less than kind. Once the door closed, Ei commented on Mrs. Bakugo's grudge-holding nature, which made Izuku giggle. She smiled at him, and he expressed how much he loved her smile. Izuku playfully assured him that he would see it for as long as she lived. Their conversation turned tender, with Ei lifting her into his arms, causing her to wrap her legs around him and her arms around his neck. He declared his love for her and for the child they were expecting, which brought tears to his eyes. Concerned, Izuku asked why he was crying, and he shared his feelings of gratitude for having her and their twins in his life. Overcome with emotion, Izuku reciprocated his affection, expressing how lucky she felt to have him by her side. Their heartfelt exchange culminated in a gentle kiss, which left them both smiling. Ei then suggested that he wanted to show her just how much he loved her, and with her consent, he playfully tossed her onto the bed, relieved that the children were spending the night with their grandmother. Months later, Izuku and Ei found themselves in a doctor's office, anxiously awaiting the revelation of their baby's gender. Izuku felt nervous, which Ei noticed and tried to soothe her. The doctor entered, ready to share the news. As the gel was applied to her growing bump, the anticipation built. The doctor confirmed that they were having a boy, and while Ei expressed disappointment at not having a girl again, Izuku playfully reassured him that there would be a next time. Fast forward 9 months, and Izuku was feeling the effects of her PRDY as she sat on a bench at the playground, watching their twins play. Suddenly, she realized her water had broken, sending her into a panic. She called for her children, who rushed to her side. With a surge of pain, she instructed Kimi to fetch her phone. As Kumi expressed concern for her mother, Izuku dialed Momo's number, explaining her situation. Momo quickly arrived with Todoroki, and they helped her into the car, along with the twins. Momo instructed Todoroki to call Ei, who answered immediately, only to be bluntly informed that his wife was in LBR. Izuku, in pain, urged them to get to the hospital quickly, and Momo complied, reassuring the children that everything would be okay. As they rushed to the hospital, Kimi yelled at Izuku's stomach, playfully chastising the baby for causing discomfort. Despite the pain, Izuku managed to laugh, and Momo encouraged them to keep moving. With the urgency of the moment, Izuka held the phone to her ear, hearing Ei's voice on the other end, ready to support her through this life-changing experience. The atmosphere in the hospital was tense, filled with anticipation. The protagonist had made it clear that they expected their partner to be present, emphasizing the importance of support during this critical moment. As they arrived, the partner was indeed waiting at the door, accompanied by several nurses. The protagonist was quickly ushered into a wheelchair and taken to a room where they changed into a hospital gown and settled onto the bed. The medical team prepared to begin the procedure, and the protagonist expressed their eagerness to get started without delay. As the nurse began her work, the protagonist felt a surge of pain, gripping their partner's hand tightly. Words of encouragement filled the air, offering reassurance during a challenging time. Amidst the struggle, the sound of a baby crying broke through, and the nurse handed the newborn to the protagonist, announcing the arrival of a healthy baby boy. A smile spread across their face as they decided on a name, Seal, which held a special significance for them. 3 years later, life had transformed in the most appealing way. The protagonist found immense joy in their family, cherishing the moments spent together with their 3 children and their partner, who had become their hero. The warmth of the fireplace on a cold winter night created a cozy atmosphere as they all cuddled together, sharing expressions of love and affection. The protagonist reflected on how fortunate they were, realizing that even a past betrayal had led to a life filled with happiness. The laughter of their children echoed in the room, and the love shared among them was a dream come true. In a different narrative, the protagonist faced a darker reality. In a moment of despair, they were confronted by a classmate who made a hurtful remark in front of their peers, leading to a painful decision. The protagonist had been contemplating an escape from their struggles, preparing letters for those they cared about, including the classmate who had tormented them. Upon arriving home, they felt a heavy weight on their heart as they sat on the ledge of their apartment window. In a moment of surrender, they let go, only to find themselves in a surreal state, observing their own lifeless body below. Confusion enveloped them as they wandered through a shadowy realm, encountering their mother, who appeared heartbroken. As they followed their mother, they noticed their classmate, now accompanied by a new friend. The protagonist's emotions stirred as they witnessed the bond forming between them. An idea sparked in their mind. They could reach out from beyond, seeking to communicate with the living. Determined, they followed their classmate home, entering their room to find it surprisingly tidy. As the classmate sat down, the protagonist took a piece of paper and wrote a simple note, hoping to make their presence known. The classmate eventually discovered the note, and a wave of anger washed over him. The protagonist felt a mix of satisfaction and curiosity about the impact their words would have. They continued to write, leaving messages in hopes of bridging the gap between their worlds, wondering how their actions would unfold in this new chapter of existence. Why did he hate me? What had I done to make him feel this way? These thoughts consumed him until he was jolted back to reality by the sound of Kaken returning to his room, clearly upset. Someone tried to calm him down, but Kaken's frustration only intensified as he slammed his door. He slid down to the floor, resting his head on his knees, overwhelmed by his emotions. He wondered why this was happening to him now, and a dark smile crept onto his face as he thought that Kaken deserved this. Time passed, and he had been leaving notes for Kaken for a while. The messages were simple and friendly, asking about his day and whether he had figured out who was sending them. After the 15th note, Kaken finally responded. His mood shifted after he wrote back, revealing that he had recognized the sender. The surprise was palpable as he realized Kaken had acknowledged him. As he watched Kaken's expression change, he noticed tears welling up in his eyes, accompanied by a small smile. Kaken whispered his name and hugged the note tightly, which broke his heart. Why was Kaken crying? Hadn't he wanted him gone? Anger surged within him, prompting him to write everything he felt on a piece of paper. Kaken's eyes widened as he witnessed the pen moving on its own. Tears streamed down his face as he read the words. He expressed his sorrow, admitting that he had lied about everything and wished they could have been the dynamic duo they once were. He lamented that he had been too late to tell him how he truly felt and that he had wanted to save him. Feeling a surge of emotion, he reached out to Kaken, attempting to comfort him despite the barrier between them. Kaken seemed to sense his presence and turned toward him, confusion etched on his face. Asked why he was crying and, to his astonishment, acknowledged that he could see him. Kaken stood up and embraced him tightly, and he returned the hug, tears flowing freely. Kaken revealed his regrets, admitting that he had wanted him to give up on his dreams of becoming a hero to protect him. He wished he had found a better way to express his feelings. The weight of their shared past hung heavily in the air as Kaken confessed his love, and he responded with his own declaration of love and forgiveness. Kaken's embrace felt cold, contrasting with the warmth of their shared emotions. Kaken expressed his remorse for the notes, but he insisted that Kaken deserved it. Their connection deepened as Kaken wished for him to stay, but he knew it was time for him to move on. As his presence began to fade, Kaken clung to him, desperate not to let go. But he reminded Kaken of the responsibilities he had, urging him to focus on the living. As he disappeared, Kaken's cries echoed in his mind, and everything went dark. He awoke suddenly, drenched in sweat, realizing it had all been a dream from Izuku's perspective. The realization hit him hard, and he felt a weight lift when he noticed the familiar green hair beside him. Izuku was alive, breathing, and there with him. Kaken's heart swelled with emotion as Izuku stirred, rubbing his eyes and asking if he was okay. He felt overwhelmed, needing to hear Izuku say his name again. When Izuku complied, he couldn't help but pull him closer, expressing his fear of losing him. In a moment of passion, he kissed Izuku, and their connection deepened as they shared several kisses, each one more fervent than the last. Kaken wanted to hold onto this moment forever, asking Izuku to promise they would be the wonder duo they had always aspired to be. With a smile, Izuku agreed, sealing their bond with a pinky promise. In that moment, Kaken felt a sense of hope and love that he thought he had lost. The ending of their story was filled with warmth and connection, a testament to their enduring bond as they embraced the future together. The evening was approaching, and the anticipation of the event weighed heavily on Izuku. He felt a mix of reluctance and excitement as he considered attending. Uraraka's enthusiastic expression made it difficult for him to decline her invitation. After a moment of hesitation, he decided to go, agreeing to meet them at 8. As he returned to his dorm room, he sat on his bed, burying his face in his hands. Tears began to fall as he grappled with the pain of jealousy. Kaken and Kirishima were together, and the sight of their happiness stung deeply. He had hoped for something more with Kaken after their last fight, but it seemed that dream had faded. With a sigh, he glanced at the clock and realized he had 2 hours to spare. He decided to take a nap. Meanwhile, Katsuki was wrestling with his own thoughts. He had reluctantly agreed to attend the event after hearing that Deku would be there, despite Kirishima's eagerness for him to join. The truth was he was growing increasingly frustrated with Kirishima. Their relationship felt suffocating, and Katsuki found himself wishing for an escape. As Kirishima sat beside him, he felt the weight of the conversation looming. He needed to address their relationship, which had become unbearable. Katsuki finally mustered the courage to speak up, stating that they needed to talk about their relationship. Kirishima, confused, pressed for details. Katsuki bluntly declared that they were not working out, his expression revealing no emotion. Kirishima laughed, thinking it was a joke, but Katsuki insisted it was serious. As the conversation escalated, Kirishima's voice cracked with disbelief. He suspected that Deku was the reason for Katsuki's change of heart. Katsuki's anger flared as he defended Deku, dismissing Kirishima's accusations. The argument reached a boiling point, and Katsuki stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Back in his room, Katsuki felt a mix of relief and uncertainty. He was now single and unsure of what to do next. Glancing at the clock, he realized it was 8:30 and hurried to get ready. He quickly prepared himself, opting not to fuss over his hair. With only 5 minutes to spare, he made his way to the common room. Upon arrival, he spotted Tsuyu and her boyfriend, along with a few others. Just then, he heard footsteps behind him and instinctively turned to see Deku approaching. Katsuki couldn't help but admire Deku's appearance, feeling a rush of warmth at the sight. Deku greeted Uraraka with excitement, and Katsuki felt a pang of jealousy as he watched them interact. He hesitated, battling his nerves, but finally decided to approach Deku, who was sitting alone on a bench. The sunset cast an appealing glow on Deku's face, making him look even more appealing. Katsuki felt his heart race as he complimented Deku, who blushed in response. Katsuki quickly tried to downplay his words, feeling embarrassed. Gathering his courage, Katsuki invited Deku to hang out, assuring him that it was fine to forget about Kirishima for the moment. Deku agreed, and Katsuki felt a surge of excitement. He took Deku's hand and led him to various stands, where they played games. Katsuki won a plush toy on his first try, teasing Deku about his lack of skill. Their playful banter brought back fond memories of their childhood, and Katsuki couldn't help but smile at the way Deku's eyes sparkled with joy. As they continued to enjoy the festivities, Katsuki led Deku toward the Ferris wheel. Deku's eyes lit up with enthusiasm, and they quickly joined the line. Once seated, the ride began to move, and Katsuki felt a mix of nerves and anticipation. He knew he had to express his feelings. As the Ferris wheel ascended, he finally admitted that he wanted to be with Deku, revealing that he had fallen in love with someone who was not Kirishima. At that moment, the ride reached its peak, and fireworks erupted in the night sky. Katsuki took a deep breath and confessed his feelings for Deku, who looked astonished. As the fireworks illuminated their faces, Katsuki leaned in and kissed Deku. The kiss was soft and warm, filled with the sweetness of cotton candy lingering on their lips. When they pulled away, Deku's cheeks were flushed, and he placed a hand over his mouth in disbelief. Katsuki declared his love for Izuku, and as tears welled in Deku's eyes, a smile spread across his face, signaling the beginning of something appealing between them. Izuku felt a rush of emotions as he declared his love for Katsuki, who responded with a passionate kiss that left them both breathless. The amusement park ride jolted them, causing them to pull apart and laugh. Izuku rested his head against Katsuki's, expressing his longing for them to belong to each other. They spent the rest of the night enjoying each other's company, sharing laughter and dreams of becoming great heroes. Eventually, they found themselves in Izuku's dorm room, cuddled together under warm covers. The comforting scent of Katsuki enveloped Izuku, and as he drifted off to sleep, he felt content, dreaming of their future together. In a darker turn of events, Izuku found himself in an abandoned room, blood splattered everywhere. Katsuki stood protectively in front of a body he had just killed. Izuku, confused and concerned, asked about the identity of the victim. Katsuki hesitated but eventually revealed that it was Uraraka. Izuku's heart raced as he expressed his own feelings of jealousy and possessiveness, revealing that he had wanted to eliminate her as well. The two boys, caught in a whirlwind of emotions, began to argue about their feelings for each other and their shared obsession over the same person. As the tension escalated, their argument turned into an unexpected moment of intimacy. Katsuki kissed Izuku deeply, igniting a passion that had been building between them. The kiss was electric, and they both surrendered to the moment, losing themselves in each other. Katsuki reveled in the warmth and sweetness of Izuku, feeling an overwhelming longing to be closer. Suddenly, they were interrupted by Kirishima, who appeared shocked at the scene before him. Katsuki, unfazed, turned to Kirishima and dismissed his concerns about Uraraka. The situation escalated quickly, with Izuku taking matters into his own hands, leading to a chaotic and bloody confrontation. Katsuki watched in a mix of awe and excitement as Izuku unleashed his fury, feeling a thrill at the intensity of the moment. As the dust settled, Katsuki and Izuku returned to their earlier passion, eager to continue what they had started. The night was filled with a blend of danger and longing, as they embraced their darker sides while exploring their feelings for one another. The connection between them deepened, intertwining their fates in ways they had never anticipated. Izuku found himself in a moment of vulnerability, feeling the weight of his emotions as he lay in his dorm room. The heat he experienced was overwhelming, intensified by the absence of his alpha, Katsuki, who was out with friends. The secrecy surrounding their relationship added to his distress, especially after hearing Kirishima, another Omega, express his feelings for Katsuki. This only deepened Izuku's anxiety, leading him to sob quietly as he struggled with his feelings. In a moment of desperation, he decided to reach out to Katsuki. He dialed his number, his heart racing as he waited for a response. When Katsuki answered, he could barely contain his breath, feeling the urgency of his situation. He explained that he was in heat and it was painful, his voice trembling with emotion. Katsuki's concern was immediate, and he promised to come over as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Katsuki was filled with a mix of frustration and worry. He had been unaware of the extent of Izuku's struggles. The thought that Izuku might feel rejected because of his reluctance to mark him weighed heavily on his mind. He realized that he needed to be there for Izuku, to support him through this difficult time. As Katsuki rushed to Izuku's side, he felt a surge of determination. He would do everything he could to comfort his partner and ensure that Izuku felt safe and loved. The bond they shared was strong, and he was ready to face any challenges that came their way together. The atmosphere was tense as the group gathered, and one member expressed a need to retrieve something from his room. The others reacted with playful jeers, but he brushed them off, insisting on the importance of his task. As he made his way to his boyfriend's room, he knocked on the door, which opened to reveal his Omega partner, breathing and wrapped in a blanket that barely concealed his form. The sight stirred something deep within him, and he gently urged his boyfriend to lie down on the bed. He inquired about what his partner needed, his hand instinctively moving to caress the exposed thigh. The response was a soft plea for intimacy, and the Omega presented himself, signaling his longing. The tension in the air thickened as he responded to the unspoken invitation, his instincts taking over. The room filled with sounds of pleasure as they lost themselves in each other, the connection between them deepening with each movement. However, as the moment reached its peak, an unexpected shift occurred. The Omega's demeanor changed, and he expressed a longing for space, leaving the other confused and frustrated. Despite the bond they shared, the Omega's insistence on not wanting to be marked left the Alpha feeling rejected. A heated argument ensued, filled with misunderstandings and raw emotions, culminating in the Omega pushing him out of the room. Feeling a mix of anger and concern, he returned to his friends, who noticed something was off. One of them, curious, asked about his relationship status, leading to a moment of introspection. He realized that his feelings for his Omega were deeper than he had acknowledged. Meanwhile, his partner was struggling with his own emotions, feeling vulnerable and overwhelmed. As the day progressed, he observed his boyfriend from a distance, noticing the way others interacted with him. A sense of protectiveness surged within him, and he decided to confront his partner. When he approached, he sensed the turmoil within the Omega, who was clearly distressed. Without hesitation, he wrapped his arms around him, offering comfort and reassurance. The Omega, initially tense, gradually relaxed in his embrace, allowing himself to be vulnerable. As they stood together, the Alpha whispered soothing words, grounding them both in the moment. Eventually, the Omega fell asleep in his arms, and he carried him to his own room, placing him gently on the bed. When he awoke, the scent of mint and vanilla enveloped him, and he found his boyfriend beside him, still in a state of distress. The Alpha instinctively reached out to comfort him, wiping away the tears that had formed. The Omega's soft whimpers filled the air, and he expressed his feelings of being overwhelmed once more. Realizing the situation, the Alpha took charge, gently exploring the boundaries of their connection. The atmosphere shifted as they navigated their desires, both aware of the intensity of their bond. The moments that followed were filled with a mix of tenderness and urgency, as they embraced the depth of their feelings for one another. Katsuki felt a surge of determination as he accepted a dare from his friends to ask Izuku out. The group had gathered in his room, seeking entertainment through a game of truth or dare. Despite his initial reluctance, he decided to prove he wasn't afraid. He set off to find Izuku, who was walking alone, engrossed in a book. Katsuki approached him, snatching the book from his hands, causing Izuku to jump in surprise. The words tumbled out of Katsuki's mouth before he could think. He asked Izuku to go out with him, fully expecting the response to be a joke. To his astonishment, Izuku smiled and agreed. Katsuki's heart raced, but he quickly masked his surprise with a gruff demeanor, insisting that he hadn't been looking for a rejection. He dragged Izuku toward his room, but Izuku hesitated, feeling uncomfortable with the sudden turn of events. Katsuki, sensing his reluctance, let him go, leaving Izuku feeling conflicted and disappointed. That night, Izuku lay in bed, tears streaming down his face as he grappled with his feelings. The next day, the two found themselves at the mall, navigating the awkwardness of their new arrangement. Initially, the outing felt strained, but as they wandered, the atmosphere began to shift. Izuku pointed out a gothic shirt that he thought Katsuki would like, and Katsuki smirked, teasingly suggesting he could just ask his mom to make it for him. Izuku's smile faltered, but he quickly masked his disappointment and continued to explore, his excitement evident as he spotted All Might merchandise. Katsuki couldn't help but notice the sparkle in Izuku's eyes, which made him feel a mix of warmth and frustration. As they walked, memories of their past interactions flooded Izuku's mind, reminding him of the bullying he had endured in middle school. Eventually, Izuku suggested they return to the dorms, and Katsuki silently followed, lost in his thoughts. Once back at the dorms, Katsuki invited Izuku to his room, but Izuku declined, mentioning a promise to help Uraraka with something. He assured Katsuki he would come by afterward. As Izuku walked away, Katsuki felt a strange mix of emotions, realizing that this unexpected connection with Izuku was more significant than he had anticipated. Katsuki walked away with a scowl, leaving Izuku feeling heavy-hearted. Instead of heading to Uraraka's room, he retreated to his own, closing the door behind him. He slid down to the floor, finally allowing the tears to fall. It had been a few weeks since Katsuki had asked him out, and what he had hoped would be a light-hearted moment had turned into a painful joke. They didn't engage in any couple-like activities, and Izuku felt the weight of that absence. He hadn't realized he had fallen asleep against the door until a knock roused him. When he opened the door, he found Todoroki standing there, looking slightly concerned. Todoroki asked if Izuku had the notes for hero class, admitting he had spaced out during the lesson. Izuku smiled and nodded, quickly retrieving his notes and handing them over. Todoroki noticed the signs of distress on Izuku's face and inquired if it was because of Katsuki. Izuku insisted he was fine, attributing his feelings to stress, but Todoroki remained unconvinced. He promised to keep an eye on Izuku before wishing him a good night and leaving. Izuku waved goodbye, unaware that Katsuki was waiting to see him. The next morning, Izuku woke up with a headache, groaning as he stretched. He got dressed in his uniform, mentally scolding himself for forgetting to buy more ibuprofen. As he walked to school, he noticed Katsuki waiting at the gate, which was unusual since Katsuki typically left before him. Izuku greeted him with a smile, but Katsuki merely grunted, urging him to hurry so they wouldn't be late. Lunch arrived quickly, and Katsuki suggested they eat together. Izuku's eyes widened in surprise, but he nodded in agreement. They settled outside, enjoying the pleasant air. As leaves fell into Izuku's hair, he felt a sense of comfort. However, that comfort was interrupted when Katsuki placed a hand on his head, teasing him about getting lice. Izuku frowned and swatted Katsuki's hand away, feeling overwhelmed. In a moment of frustration, he yelled that he couldn't do this anymore and ran off. Katsuki was confused by his own feelings. His heart fluttered whenever Izuku smiled or did something endearing, yet he didn't know how to express that. Instead, he often resorted to yelling at Izuku, which only deepened his sense of dejection. He realized he had fallen in love with Izuku Midoriya, but the thought of those feelings terrified him. He believed that breaking up with Izuku would free him from the emotional turmoil, so he decided to tell Izuku that the whole thing had been a prank. When he confronted Izuku, he stated that he was breaking up with him, claiming it was a lame joke that needed to end. To Katsuki's shock, Izuku simply smiled and said he would see him later before walking away. Katsuki stood frozen, unprepared for that reaction. From that day on, Izuku avoided Katsuki, and word of their breakup spread quickly. Other students began asking Izuku out as a joke, and he laughed along, but Katsuki often wondered what might have happened if he hadn't ended things. One day, as he passed a classroom, he overheard a student making inappropriate comments to Izuku. Katsuki felt a surge of anger and confronted the student, demanding they leave Izuku alone. After the student fled, Katsuki turned to check on Izuku, who seemed shaken. When Katsuki asked if he was okay, Izuku mumbled a negative response, and Katsuki's frustration boiled over. He yelled at Izuku to talk to him, but Izuku insisted he needed to study and wanted to be left alone. Katsuki was taken aback when Izuku called him by his last name instead of the nickname he usually used. Izuku expressed his disappointment about the prank, revealing that he had known all along and had hoped for a different response from Katsuki. Tears streamed down Izuku's face as he admitted he liked Katsuki and had wanted to be treated like a boyfriend, not a bully. After a brief moment, Izuku gathered his things and left, asking Katsuki to stop with the jokes. Katsuki was left in a state of turmoil, feeling lost for words. His friend Denki approached him, asking what was wrong. Katsuki vented his frustration, explaining that he had tried to apologize but it hadn't worked. Denki suggested he could text Izuku under the pretense of visiting for a project, allowing Katsuki to speak with him. Reluctantly, Katsuki agreed, hoping to make things right. Later, Izuku received a text from Denki, indicating he was coming over. Izuku replied affirmatively, feeling a mix of anticipation and dread as he waited for Denki to arrive. Another prank had been played, which left Izuku frowning as he heard a knock on his door. When he opened it, he was surprised to see Katsuki Bakudeku standing there. Izuku instinctively tried to push the door closed, but Katsuki grabbed his wrist and pulled him into an embrace. Izuku squirmed and pushed against Katsuki, but he wouldn't let go, even as Izuku began to hit him in protest. Katsuki tightened his grip, making it clear that he wasn't going to release him anytime soon. As Izuku felt tears dampen his shirt, he cried out that this wasn't funny anymore and demanded to be let go. Katsuki, however, insisted that this wasn't a joke. Despite Izuku's struggles, Katsuki pushed him into his room, closing the door behind them. Izuku stumbled and fell onto the floor, letting out a small hiss of pain. Suddenly, he found himself pinned to the ground by Katsuki, who hovered over him, holding his hands down. Panic filled Izuku's eyes as he listened to Katsuki's urgent words. Katsuki expressed his regret for embarrassing Izuku and admitted that he had fallen in love with him during their time together. He had thought breaking up would make his feelings disappear, but they had only intensified. Katsuki couldn't bear it when Izuku didn't acknowledge him or used his last name instead of his nickname. Izuku was stunned into silence. The boy he had admired, who had bullied him and been his childhood friend, was confessing his feelings and crying. Overwhelmed, Izuku couldn't help but cry even more. He remembered the promises Katsuki had made when they were younger, vowing to protect him and be by his side, and he struggled to reconcile those memories with the present. Realizing he had spoken his thoughts aloud, his tears continued to flow. Katsuki stood still for a moment, loosening his grip on Izuku's wrist. He ground his teeth in frustration and pulled Izuku into another hug. Izuku didn't resist this time, he simply cried harder. Katsuki, though rough around the edges, had never forgotten his feelings. He admitted that he didn't know how to show how much he cared and repeatedly apologized, asking for a chance to prove himself. He wanted to love Izuku and be his boyfriend. Izuku remained frozen, unable to respond. His breath was shallow, and he trembled in Katsuki's arms. Katsuki, sensing his distress, pulled away slightly before pressing his lips against Izuku's. Izuku's eyes widened in surprise, but he gradually kissed back. The kiss was soft and warm, leaving them both breathless. Katsuki was the first to pull away, only to kiss him again and again, stealing Izuku's breath. When they finally stopped, Izuku was left gasping, his lips swollen and red. Katsuki pleaded for Izuku's forgiveness, promising to be better if he would just be with him. Izuku smiled through his tears and set a challenge. Katsuki had a week to impress him, starting from this moment. The first day of their new relationship was amusing for Izuku. Katsuki walked to school with him, and they talked about their favorite hero and shared interests. During lunch, when Izuku realized he had forgotten his lunch money, Katsuki generously bought him food. They joked around, and when Katsuki accidentally spilled some of his meal on his blazer, he yelled at the food, making Izuku laugh. In training, they fought alongside each other, their competitive natures still evident. Katsuki continued to pamper Izuku after school and at night, enjoying the way Izuku smiled and laughed at his antics. Each time they parted, Katsuki would ask if he was impressing Izuku, who always replied that he would have to wait to see. When Friday arrived, Katsuki knocked on Izuku's door, his heart racing. Izuku opened the door with a smile, greeting him warmly. Katsuki asked if he was ready for their date, and Izuku blushed and nodded, excited for their day off together. They went to the movies to see an all-night film, which both enjoyed immensely. Afterward, Katsuki took Izuku to a fancy restaurant where Izuku ordered his favorite dish, katsudon. Katsuki watched with delight as Izuku savored his meal, and they chatted about school and their fighting techniques. After a brief argument over the bill, Katsuki insisted on paying, and they continued their day. As they walked hand in hand, Izuku was surprised by the gesture but felt happy as Katsuki squeezed his hand. They arrived at the park where they used to play as children, and Izuku gasped at the sight of flower petals leading into the forest. When he turned to share his excitement with Katsuki, he found that Katsuki had disappeared. Calling out for him, Izuku ran into the forest, following the trail of petals. After stumbling a few times, he reached a clearing adorned with candles and a picnic table covered with a cloth. On the table was a dessert and a sign that read, "I love you, Izuku Midoriya." Overwhelmed with emotion, Izuku began to cry. He looked around and spotted Katsuki standing by a tree with open arms. Unable to contain himself, Izuku rushed into Katsuki's embrace. Katsuki held him tightly, and after a moment, Izuku pulled back and kissed him passionately, their love evident in that moment. They enjoyed the dessert together before walking back to the dorms, deciding to spend the night in Katsuki's room. As Izuku yawned and hugged Katsuki, he expressed how much fun he had that day. Katsuki smiled and returned the hug, suggesting they go to bed since there was more to look forward to tomorrow. Izuku nodded and settled into Katsuki's bed, giggling as Katsuki playfully demanded space to join him. They snuggled together, content in each other's presence. The warmth from Katsuki and the blanket enveloped Izuku, bringing him a sense of comfort. A small sigh of contentment escaped him as he nestled against Katsuki's chest. The two quickly fell asleep, eagerly awaiting the arrival of the next day. Izuku had been having a particularly challenging week. He had planned to ask his crush, Katsuki, out, but his hopes were dashed when Kirishima beat him to it. To make matters worse, he forgot his lunch money and neglected to study for an important test. Training was grueling, especially when he had to face Kirishima without letting his frustration show. Katsuki's demeanor had become increasingly aggressive, adding to Izuku's turmoil. On Friday, instead of heading straight to the dorms after school, Izuku found himself walking to the beach he often cleaned. He settled down in a secluded spot, hoping to remain unseen. As he stared at his hands, he couldn't help but wonder why everything seemed to be going wrong. Feelings of sadness washed over him, and tears began to fall, landing softly on his hands. He hugged himself tightly, pulling his legs to his chest and resting his head on his knees, questioning what he had done to deserve this pain. Just then, a familiar voice interrupted his thoughts. Midnight approached, having spotted him. Izuku stammered out a greeting, surprised by her presence. She sat down beside him and asked why he was crying. After a moment of hesitation, he shared that he had wanted to ask his crush out, but someone else had done so first. He expressed his bitterness over Katsuki choosing someone he had only known for a short time over him. Midnight listened intently as Izuku revealed his heartache, his emotions spilling over as he acknowledged that he had anticipated this kind of disappointment. She reassured him that it was okay to cry and encouraged him not to let Katsuki's choice define his worth. There were many other potential partners out there, and he should not feel defeated. Feeling grateful for her support, Izuku thanked her as she reminded him to head back before curfew. He returned to his dorm, avoiding the two who had caused him pain. Once inside, he buried himself in his blankets, reflecting on Midnight's words. He felt lost and unworthy of love, questioning who could ever care for him. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Denki called out, eager to show him something. Izuku wiped his tears and opened the door to find Denki holding a card game. Denki acknowledged Izuku's heartbreak and suggested they spend time together to help each other move on. Izuku smiled and welcomed him in, feeling a sense of relief. As they played cards, laughter filled the room, and they quickly fell into a comfortable rhythm. They spent the entire night together, enjoying each other's company. As the evening came to a close, Denki expressed a longing to hang out again, and Izuku eagerly agreed. Over the following weeks, their friendship blossomed. Izuku helped Denki study, and they enjoyed outings to the mall and cafes. Despite their growing feelings for one another, neither of them dared to voice it. Rumors circulated that Katsuki and Kirishima had broken up, but instead of feeling relieved, both Izuku and Denki found themselves still drawn to their respective crushes. One day, Katsuki called out to Izuku, demanding his attention. Izuku followed him, feeling a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Katsuki led him to a secluded area and suddenly pushed him against the wall. Izuku's eyes widened in shock as Katsuki kissed him forcefully. Confusion and fear flooded his mind as he struggled against the unexpected advance, silently pleading for help. In that moment, he heard Denki's voice calling out for him, a lifeline amidst the chaos. Izuku felt a mix of fear and confusion as he found himself in a troubling situation. Katsuki had been aggressive, and Izuku felt trapped, unable to escape the unwanted advances. He hoped his friend Denki would hear his silent cries for help. When Denki turned the corner and called out to him, Katsuki's demeanor shifted, and he confronted Denki with irritation. Denki was looking for Izuku, and upon seeing the distress on Izuku's face, he sensed something was wrong. Izuku felt a tear slip down his cheek as he looked at Denki, who immediately offered to help him study, trying to pull him away from Katsuki. Katsuki protested, insisting that Izuku was studying with him, but Izuku, torn between the two, apologized and chose to follow Denki. Once they were in Denki's room, Denki noticed Izuku's distress and asked what had happened. Izuku struggled to articulate his feelings, his emotions overwhelming him. Denki, concerned, urged Izuku not to cry and gently wiped away his tears. Izuku leaned into Denki's comforting touch, feeling a sense of safety. He finally managed to express that Katsuki had been harassing him, and as he shared his fears, he felt the weight of his emotions lift slightly. Denki listened intently, his concern growing as Izuku revealed his feelings of fear and helplessness. Izuku admitted that he wished Denki had been there to support him. In a moment of vulnerability, he confessed his feelings for Denki, who was initially taken aback but soon reciprocated those feelings. Denki promised to protect Izuku from Katsuki, assuring him that he would always be there for him. Their bond deepened as they shared a tender moment, and Denki leaned in to kiss Izuku gently. This kiss was filled with warmth and affection, contrasting sharply with Izuku's previous experience. After pulling away, Denki expressed his own feelings, and the two felt a renewed sense of hope and connection. They decided to announce their relationship to their friends in the commons room, where everyone celebrated their union, except for Katsuki and Kirishima, who appeared displeased. Uraraka and Mina warned Katsuki and Kirishima not to harm the new couple, and the two boys nodded in agreement, realizing they needed to tread carefully. Izuku and Denki quickly became inseparable, their love evident to everyone around them. They shared affectionate moments, openly displaying their feelings for each other. Meanwhile, Katsuki and Kirishima rekindled their own relationship, though they were less expressive about it. Despite the challenges they faced, Izuku and Denki's love flourished, proving that nothing could stand in the way of their happiness, not even the fiercest adversaries. Their journey together was just beginning, filled with promise and the strength of their bond. No matter where Izuku went, he felt the presence of his tormentors. He confided in Katsuki, expressing his confusion and pain, questioning what he had done to deserve such treatment. Katsuki approached him, bringing warmth that Izuku had missed for a long time. He sat down beside him, urging Izuku to look at him, but Izuku shook his head, feeling unworthy of Katsuki's concern. Katsuki revealed that he had searched for Izuku, not wanting to leave him behind, but Izuku reminded him that he had chosen to pursue his dreams at UA, a decision Izuku had accepted, believing Katsuki deserved it. Katsuki insisted that he wanted to maintain their connection and never intended to abandon Izuku. He expressed that heroes should not forsake those they care about, and Izuku, still looking away, reassured him that it was fine, as that was the nature of heroes. Katsuki vehemently disagreed, stating that true heroes protect those they love. Izuku, feeling overwhelmed, allowed his tears to flow as rain began to fall lightly. He panicked, fearing that his tormentors would find him again and hurt him worse than before. Katsuki, noticing Izuku's distress, promised to keep him safe and suggested they leave the area. However, Izuku was terrified that Katsuki would be harmed like his mother had been. Katsuki's heart sank at the mention of Izuku's mother, and the wind picked up as the rain intensified. He grabbed Izuku's hand, which made Izuku flinch, but Katsuki needed him to know he was there for him. Katsuki had been keeping watch that day, often retreating to the rooftop where he felt at peace, hoping to catch a glimpse of Izuku. He had fallen in love with Izuku from the moment they met and had searched for him after leaving to pursue his own dreams. When he found Izuku at his favorite spot, he was horrified by the sight of his friend's injuries. Izuku's left eye was bruised, his lip cut, and a massive bruise marred his cheek. The tears streaming down Izuku's face made the scene even more heartbreaking. Izuku cried out in anguish, revealing the pain inflicted upon him by those who sought to harm him. He lamented the loss of happiness and love, expressing his despair into the stormy sky. Katsuki's heart shattered at Izuku's cries, and he pulled him back from the edge, assuring him that he would not let anyone hurt him again. He vowed to stay by Izuku's side, promising to show him that he deserved love and happiness. Izuku froze at Katsuki's declaration, the storm seemingly pausing as well. When Katsuki pulled away to look at him, he saw a flicker of hope in Izuku's eyes. Katsuki promised on his future as a hero, and Izuku, feeling a glimmer of relief, managed a small smile. He slowly returned Katsuki's embrace, nuzzling into his neck, finding comfort in his warmth. For the first time in a long while, Izuku felt safe enough to fall asleep in Katsuki's arms. When Izuku awoke, he felt as if he were lying on a cloud, reluctant to rise. He surveyed the room, noting its spaciousness and the large bed adorned with white linens. The decor was calming, with light gray walls and dark wooden floors. As he sat up, he realized he was dressed in unfamiliar clothes, which confused him momentarily until memories of the previous night flooded back. His thoughts were interrupted by raised voices. He approached the source of the commotion, rubbing his eyes and yawning. Katsuki and Kirishima were engaged in a heated discussion about the injustice of violence against innocent people. Izuku, still groggy, inquired about their argument, and Katsuki quickly reassured him that it was nothing important. The sight of Izuku in oversized clothing, looking adorable while rubbing his eyes, softened Katsuki and Kirishima's hearts. They both felt a surge of protectiveness over him, realizing just how much he meant to them. Izuku smiled and nodded in response to Katsuki's suggestion that he return to sleep, promising they would talk later. Katsuki, calm in his demeanor, watched as Izuku walked back to the room. Kirishima, having just left, exchanged a knowing smirk with Katsuki, who simply muttered a dismissive remark. After Kirishima departed, Katsuki decided to check on Izuku. He felt a sense of responsibility to protect him, especially after agreeing to investigate those who had harmed Izuku and the circumstances surrounding his mother's death. Although Katsuki wished he could take more direct action, he focused on nurturing his relationship with Izuku. For now, he found himself simply observing Izuku as he slept, the boy appearing peaceful. Izuku finally awoke around noon, panic setting in as he realized how late it was. He had thought he could trust the man he was staying with, but sleeping in had made him anxious. He hurried down to the kitchen, where the enticing aroma of bacon and pancakes greeted him. Turning the corner, he spotted Katsuki cooking, a sight that brought back memories of watching his father in the kitchen. A soft sigh escaped him as he called out to Katsuki. Katsuki noticed Izuku's gaze and smirked, teasing him about staring. Izuku, feeling embarrassed, apologized and approached Katsuki, who reassured him that he wasn't upset. Izuku remained quiet, feeling the need to express his regret for the misunderstanding. Katsuki, sensing Izuku's shyness, asked if he was hungry, and before Izuku could respond, his stomach growled in answer. Katsuki chuckled, interpreting it as a clear yes. Izuku blushed and made his way to the table. where Katsuki placed a plate of food in front of him. The sight of the meal made Izuku's face light up with joy, prompting another chuckle from Katsuki, who playfully warned him not to drool on the food. Izuku huffed in response but began to eat with a pout, while Katsuki joined him, laughing lightly. As Katsuki prepared to leave for work, he informed Izuku that he would see him later in the evening. Izuku, feeling a twinge of concern, wished him to be safe. Katsuki, full of confidence, reassured him that he was the best and had nothing to worry about. Izuku smiled, amused by Katsuki's pride. As Katsuki turned to leave, Izuku unexpectedly grabbed his wrist, looking down at the floor and expressing his discomfort with being alone. Katsuki, moved by Izuku's vulnerability, pulled him into a comforting hug and kissed the top of his head, promising to return soon. He reassured Izuku that he would only be gone for a few hours. After a moment, he leaned down to meet Izuku's gaze, affirming his promise with a gentle kiss on the nose. Izuku blushed and smiled, feeling a sense of warmth as Katsuki finally departed. As time passed, Izuku found himself growing anxious in the silence of the house. The stillness felt oppressive, and the broken television offered no distraction. He was acutely aware that someone was searching for him, and the heat of the day only heightened his discomfort. He repeatedly pleaded with himself to remain hidden, feeling overwhelmed by fear. Unable to cry, he focused on shallow breaths and tried to steady his trembling body. Suddenly, he was jolted from his thoughts by a voice that sent a chill down his spine, declaring that he had been found. Izuku flinched, recognizing the voice all too well. Panic surged within him as he questioned how this person had tracked him down. The intruder taunted Izuku, demanding to know why he thought he could escape so easily. Izuku, terrified, shook his head in denial, but the man insisted he hadn't heard him. As Izuku's breathing quickened, he silently called out for Katsuki, hoping for rescue. Just then, a familiar voice broke through the tension, demanding the intruder leave. Katsuki's anger was palpable as he confronted the man who had harmed Izuku. The intruder, taken aback by Katsuki's fierce protectiveness, reluctantly retreated, vowing to return. Once the threat had departed, Katsuki rushed to Izuku's side, noticing his distressed state. Izuku, feeling guilty for the trouble he had caused, whispered an apology. Katsuki reassured him that he had willingly stepped into the situation to protect him and promised to help him remember what it felt like to be loved. When Izuku hesitantly asked if he could cry, Katsuki nodded, allowing him the space to express his emotions. As Izuku broke down, Katsuki whispered comforting words, assuring him that he was safe, offering the kind of solace Izuku had not experienced in years. Later, Katsuki found himself on the couch, leaning against the armrest with Izuku resting in his lap, having fallen asleep after a long bout of tears. Katsuki smiled, grateful to have found Izuku, even if the circumstances were not what he had hoped for. He vowed to help Izuku heal and to remind him that it was okay to feel loved and to move past the pain of his past. In his sleep, Izuku mumbled a plea for help, stirring Katsuki's heart. He felt a deep sense of responsibility to support Izuku, knowing that the boy had endured far too much. Just then, Izuku stirred, looking up at Katsuki with tired eyes. He revealed that this was not the first time he had been found by someone who meant him harm. He spoke of a previous encounter that had left him feeling vulnerable and ashamed, sharing how he had been hurt by others who had exploited his trust. As he nestled closer to Katsuki, he recounted the painful memories, revealing the connections between his past and the people who had caused him suffering. Katsuki listened intently, determined to be the protector Izuku needed. The man who had caused Izuku distress had crossed a serious line. Izuku's voice trembled as he recounted the events, revealing that he had lost his mother in the aftermath. Katsuki felt a surge of anger ignite within him as Izuku expressed his fear, seeking comfort in Katsuki's embrace. Katsuki gently patted Izuku's tousled hair, reassuring him that he would always be there to protect him. Izuku, with his puffy, red eyes and a bruise marring his cheek, looked up at Katsuki, searching for a promise of safety. Despite the pain etched on his face, there was a flicker of hope in his emerald eyes that Katsuki hadn't seen in a long time. With a smile, Katsuki extended his pinky, sealing their promise. Izuku smiled back, intertwining their pinkies before resting his head against Katsuki's chest, ready to drift back to sleep. Katsuki felt a sense of contentment wash over him as he listened to Izuku's soft snores and felt the warmth of his presence. However, this tranquility was abruptly interrupted when a group of Katsuki's friends burst through the door. They gathered around, surprised to see Izuku peacefully sleeping on Katsuki's lap. The excitement in the room was palpable as they bombarded Katsuki with questions about his relationship with Izuku. Katsuki, feeling protective, responded with a mix of irritation and pride, affirming that he had known Izuku since childhood. His friends were thrilled, teasing him about his feelings for Izuku, but Katsuki remained resolute in his determination to keep their bond intact. As the conversation continued, they revealed that they had come to celebrate Katsuki's recent victory, a moment that had been delayed. Just then, Izuku stirred awake, mumbling for them to be quiet as he nestled closer to Katsuki. Katsuki felt a blush creep up his cheeks at the warmth of Izuku's breath against his skin, and his friends struggled to contain their laughter. Mina, ever the photographer, captured the moment, much to Katsuki's annoyance. Despite his irritation, he couldn't help but feel a sense of joy at the sight of Izuku, who had become such an important part of his life. In a sudden shift, the narrative turned darker as Izuku found himself running for his life, pursued by shadowy figures. Panic gripped him as he struggled against an unseen force that held him down. A sinister voice taunted him, amplifying his fear and despair. Despite his efforts to escape, he felt trapped, his body betraying him as he succumbed to the overwhelming dread. Just as he felt the crushing weight of despair, he jolted awake, finding himself back in Katsuki's bed, breathless and terrified. Katsuki, alerted by the noise, rushed to Izuku's side, concern etched on his face. He noticed Izuku's fear and quickly reassured him that he was safe, promising that nothing from his dreams would harm him. They sealed their promise with a pinky swear, a gesture that brought a small measure of comfort to Izuku. With Katsuki's help, Izuku regained his footing, and they settled back down, Izuku finding solace in Katsuki's embrace once more. As the morning light filtered through the window, Katsuki awoke to find Izuku still asleep beside him. A smile spread across his face as he gently caressed Izuku's cheek, feeling a warmth in his heart as Izuku leaned into his touch. The bond they shared was growing stronger, and Katsuki felt a sense of peace he had never known before. Katsuki felt an unprecedented sense of contentment as he lay beside Izuku, who was peacefully sleeping. The warmth of Izuku's hand brought a smile to Katsuki's face, even as he tried to hide the blush that crept onto his cheeks when Izuku stirred and commented on it. The playful banter between them filled the room with laughter, and Katsuki couldn't help but feel his heart race at the sight of Izuku blushing in return. As the morning light filtered through the window, Katsuki playfully pounced on Izuku, tickling him until he erupted into laughter. Their eyes locked, and in a moment of shared vulnerability, they leaned in and shared a soft, gentle kiss. Katsuki was taken aback by the intimacy, having expected Izuku to take things slower. But Izuku wrapped his arms around Katsuki's neck, pulling him closer, as Katsuki's hands found their way to Izuku's waist. Just as the moment deepened, the bedroom door swung open, interrupting their private world. Kirishima and Denki stood in the doorway, their surprise evident. Katsuki growled in annoyance while Izuku instinctively shrank back into the bed, feeling a rush of anxiety at the unexpected intrusion. Katsuki, protective as ever, demanded they leave, but Kirishima quickly reassured them that they had important news regarding a case that needed to be addressed. Katsuki's attention sharpened as Kirishima revealed that an investigation had been opened concerning Izuku's safety. The urgency of the situation settled in as they discussed the potential danger posed by a man who had threatened Izuku. Katsuki felt a surge of protectiveness and insisted on accompanying Izuku and their friends on the investigation, unwilling to let Izuku face any danger alone. With a plan in place, the group prepared to start their investigation the next day. Katsuki made sure Izuku had everything he needed, including new clothes, as they both knew the importance of being ready. As their friends left, Katsuki turned to Izuku, feeling a mix of gratitude and determination. He promised to protect him, his heart swelling with emotion as he acknowledged how happy he was to have Izuku by his side. The investigation unfolded quickly over the next few days. Thanks to Katsuki's relentless drive, they managed to locate all the individuals on the list Izuku had provided. The tension mounted as they confronted the men responsible for threatening Izuku, and Katsuki noticed the way Izuku trembled with fear. He instinctively pulled Izuku close, wanting to shield him from the chaos. With many of the offenders apprehended and facing justice, Izuku felt a wave of relief wash over him. He expressed his gratitude to Katsuki, who, despite his tough exterior, allowed a small smile to break through. Katsuki acknowledged the stress of the situation, joking about how he thought he would go gray from worry. Their shared laughter lightened the mood, and Katsuki took Izuku's hand, leading him home. Once at home, they settled onto the couch, with Izuku resting comfortably against Katsuki. In a quiet moment, Izuku confessed his love, causing Katsuki's heart to race. The admission surprised him, but he quickly reciprocated, his voice filled with emotion. The warmth of their connection deepened as they shared another gentle kiss, solidifying their bond. As they relaxed together, Katsuki felt a profound sense of happiness and fulfillment. He had never experienced anything like it before, and neither had Izuku. In that moment, they both knew they had found something special in each other, a love that would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead. In a world where emotions ran high and relationships were complex, a character found themselves reflecting on their current situation. They felt a deep sense of regret and wanted to express their apologies, hoping that time would heal the wounds they had caused. As they navigated through their thoughts, they stumbled upon a collection of images that seemed to resonate with their feelings of solitude. Each picture conveyed a sense of being single, capturing the essence of independence and self-discovery. Although these images were not their own creations, they appreciated the artistry behind them, recognizing the talent of the original creators. This journey of introspection led the character to understand the importance of self-acceptance and the value of personal growth. They realized that being single was not merely a status but an opportunity to explore their identity and passions. With newfound clarity, they embraced their situation, ready to face whatever the future held. Izuku whispered the safe word, signaling his boyfriend, Katsuki, to stop. Katsuki immediately ceased his movements and looked down at Izuku, who was trembling from overstimulation. He quickly released the restraints that held Izuku to the bed frame and removed the devices that had been causing him discomfort. Katsuki noticed the tears on Izuku's cheeks and gently kissed them away, expressing his concern for his boyfriend's well-being. Izuku felt guilty for having used the safe word, believing it had prevented Katsuki from reaching his own satisfaction. However, Katsuki reassured him that his safety was far more important than anything else. He emphasized the importance of the safe word and praised Izuku for using it, reminding him that it was there for a reason. Once they were both calmer, Katsuki suggested they clean up. Izuku, wanting to be held, lifted his arms, signaling for Katsuki to carry him. With a chuckle, Katsuki obliged, wrapping Izuku's legs around his waist as he walked to the bathroom. He placed Izuku on the counter and prepared a bath, asking which scent of bath bomb he preferred. Izuku eagerly chose caramel, a scent that reminded Katsuki of him. As the bath filled with warm water, Katsuki gently placed Izuku inside, positioning himself behind him for support. He began washing Izuku's hair, enjoying the way his boyfriend leaned into his touch. Katsuki was careful and tender, ensuring that Izuku felt relaxed and cared for. He playfully reminded Izuku to stay awake while rinsing the soap from his hair, but Izuku was already drifting off, lulled by Katsuki's gentle ministrations. After thoroughly washing Izuku, Katsuki helped him to his feet and dried him off with a towel. Noticing that Izuku's wrists were slightly red, he applied some cream to soothe them before dressing him in comfortable, oversized clothes. Satisfied with how adorable Izuku looked, Katsuki carried him to the couch, where he planned to change the bed sheets. While in the bedroom, Katsuki recalled the earlier events that had led to the use of the safe word. He quickly took care of the mess, focusing on the task at hand. Once the sheets were in the washing machine, he returned to the living room, where he found Izuku had fallen asleep, cuddled up in Katsuki's sweatshirt. He placed a gentle kiss on Izuku's temple before finishing the chores. After changing the sheets, Katsuki returned to the living room, picked up Izuku, and carried him back to their bedroom. He laid Izuku down on the bed, covering him with a blanket before joining him. Pulling Izuku close, Katsuki whispered sweet words of affection as they both drifted off to sleep, celebrating their love and the milestone of their 5-year anniversary. In a flashback to middle school, Katsuki had been harsh and dismissive, expressing anger when Izuku confessed his feelings. Izuku had flinched at Katsuki's words, feeling the sting of rejection. Despite the pain, he had mustered the courage to express his feelings, even as tears threatened to fall from his eyes. The contrast between that moment and their current relationship highlighted the growth and depth of their bond over the years. Katsuki Bakudeku felt a surge of superiority as he looked down at Izuku Midoriya, who was trembling in fear. He had just insulted Izuku, calling him pathetic and a nerd, before a teacher interrupted their confrontation. The teacher entered the empty classroom, prompting Katsuki to turn his attention away from Izuku. He leaned down, making eye contact with the frightened boy, and whispered a taunt before walking off with the teacher. Once Katsuki was gone, Izuku succumbed to his emotions, sobbing uncontrollably. As he cried, he felt a strange sensation in his eyes and looked down to see bright yellow stars falling to the ground. In shock, he grabbed his phone and turned on the camera, confirming that he was indeed crying stars. He picked one up, examining it closely and wondering if this strange phenomenon meant he was going to die. Suddenly, he heard footsteps approaching and quickly gathered the stars into his backpack before fleeing the scene. As he dashed past his classmates, he overheard one of Katsuki's friends exclaiming in surprise. Katsuki, excited by the chase, activated his quirk and decided to follow Izuku. Izuku ran home as fast as he could, but Katsuki and his friends were hot on his heels. He felt a sense of dread as he realized he wouldn't make it home in time. Just as he feared, Katsuki tackled him to the ground, laughing triumphantly. Izuku lay there, wishing for someone to rescue him. Fortunately, his luck changed when Katsuki's mother arrived and scolded her son for his behavior, insisting he help Izuku up. Katsuki resisted, but as his mother approached, Izuku seized the opportunity to escape and sprinted toward his house. Upon arriving home, Izuku was still unaware of the tears streaming down his face, the stars continuing to fall. His mother stood in shock as she saw him, her eyes wide with concern. She rushed to him, wrapping him in a comforting embrace and guiding him inside. She asked him what had happened, expressing her worry about whether this was a quirk or something else. Izuku, overwhelmed with emotion, explained that he had confessed his feelings to someone who had rejected him, and now he was crying stars. The pain was unbearable, and he felt like he was losing control. His mother, heartbroken for her son, decided they needed to see a doctor. Izuku nodded, still sobbing, and together they made their way to the clinic. At the doctor's office, they learned that Izuku had a condition called star tears, which was common among young people experiencing unrequited love. The doctor explained that the only cure was for the person he loved to reciprocate those feelings. If that didn't happen, the consequences could be severe, including potential blindness if he remained close to the person who rejected him. Izuku felt a wave of despair wash over him, and tears flowed freely, this time normal tears instead of stars. His mother listened intently, her heart aching for her son. That night, Izuku struggled to fall asleep, haunted by the day's events. His mother peeked into his room and gently suggested he stay home from school the next day. He nodded in agreement, grateful for her understanding. After a few hours of restless sleep, a loud banging on the front door jolted him awake. He hurried to answer it, only to find Katsuki standing there. Panic surged through him as he tried to shut the door, but Katsuki caught it just in time. Katsuki shouted at him, demanding to know why he was acting this way. Izuku, feeling overwhelmed, begged him to leave. Katsuki barged in, pushing the door open forcefully, causing Izuku to stumble backward. In a moment of aggression, Katsuki grabbed Izuku by the hair, but before he could do anything further, Izuku's mother intervened, slapping Katsuki's hand away. The room fell silent as she confronted Katsuki, demanding he leave and warning him that she would inform his mother about his behavior. Katsuki, taken aback, complied and exited the house. Izuku remained on the floor, covering his face with his hands. His mother knelt beside him, urging him to look at her so she could see if he was hurt. When he finally did, her expression shifted from concern to horror as she noticed the blood on his hands and face, mingling with the glowing stars. Izuku, in agony, confessed that he couldn't see anything. In a panic, his mother grabbed her phone and called for help. Just as she began to explain the situation to the operator, Izuku lost consciousness. When he awoke, he found himself in a hospital, surrounded by the beeping of machines. However, he could see nothing but darkness. He reached out, desperate for someone to be there, but he was alone. Calling for his mother, he felt a rising sense of dread as silence enveloped him. He shouted her name, and soon he heard the sound of hurried footsteps and voices approaching. Izuku panicked and called out for his mother, feeling lost and frightened. His mother reassured him that she was right there, holding his hand tightly. He expressed his fear and confusion, unable to see her. She apologized, her heart aching for him. Just then, a doctor entered the room, greeting Izuku and explaining that he had just woken up. The doctor informed him that he would need to conduct some tests and that he would explain everything shortly. The doctor revealed that the star tears had taken away Izuku's ability to see. The person he had confessed to had been too close for too long, and the act of collecting the stars had caused damage to his eyes. Izuku sobbed, wishing desperately that this was all just a nightmare. That moment marked the beginning of a difficult journey for him. 2 years passed, during which Izuku learned to navigate his new reality. He was taught how to distinguish between different fabrics, foods, and words, as well as how to walk with a cane and navigate unfamiliar areas. Instead of attending UA, he went to a school for students with disabilities, where he made new friends. His best friend, Denki Kaminari, had lost his hearing due to his quirk 2 years prior. Denki had learned sign language and how to read lips, and the two quickly bonded over their shared experiences of losing their senses. Denki never judged Izuku for being quirkless or for his sexuality, as he himself identified as pansexual. Despite the support of his friends, Izuku still experienced nightmares about the day he lost his sight. He often thought about Katsuki, the person who had caused him so much pain, but he quickly pushed those thoughts away, focusing instead on his studies and his friendship with Denki. One day, their teacher announced that they would be touring UA. Everyone, including Denki, was excited, but Izuku felt a wave of dread wash over him. He knew that Katsuki would be there, and he was not ready to face him. Denki noticed Izuku's unease and asked if he was okay. Izuku, lost in thought, merely nodded. Denki, wanting to lighten the mood, suggested that if they encountered Katsuki, they could pretend to be dating, assuring Izuku that he would take charge of the situation. Izuku smiled at the idea, feeling a bit more at ease. As they held hands tightly, not just for the sake of their plan but also for support, Denki squeezed Izuku's hand gently, reassuring him that he was there for him. Izuku returned the gesture, grateful for his friend's presence. Upon arriving at UA, their tour guide introduced himself as Nizo. He explained the rules and encouraged the students to approach him if they needed anything. He also made sure to communicate with those who were deaf or hard of hearing. The group began their tour with enthusiasm. When lunchtime arrived, All Might made a surprise appearance, announcing that they would be providing free food and that he would continue the tour afterward. The students were thrilled and followed him to the cafeteria. Meanwhile, Katsuki had been wondering what had happened to Izuku. He regretted his actions and had searched for Izuku for months, but eventually decided to focus on his studies. However, when he spotted Izuku holding hands with someone and using a cane, he felt a surge of anger. He called out to Izuku, drawing everyone's attention to him. The grip on Denki's hand tightened as Izuku trembled, feeling the weight of all the eyes on him. All Might intervened, urging Katsuki to calm down and think rationally. Katsuki, however, was furious, accusing Izuku of seeking attention. Izuku, overwhelmed, whispered to his teacher that he wanted to leave. The teacher nodded and began to guide Izuku and Denki away, but Katsuki refused to let it go and approached them. Aizawa, another teacher, stepped in, warning Katsuki to back off. He pointed out that Izuku was blind and unable to defend himself, emphasizing that Katsuki's actions could be seen as villainous. Katsuki begrudgingly complied, acknowledging Aizawa's authority. Aizawa led Izuku and Denki to a quieter space, allowing them a moment to breathe. He apologized for Katsuki's behavior, and Izuku expressed that he had expected such an encounter. He felt regret for coming to UA in the first place. Denki, reading Izuku's lips, felt a mix of anger and helplessness. He understood how much Izuku had wanted to be there, not just for himself but also to support Denki. Denki was frustrated that he couldn't do anything to help Izuku in that moment, feeling the weight of Katsuki's anger and the fear it instilled in them both. Izuku trembled, unable to shake off the fear and pain that had haunted him for the past 2 years. He could still feel the grip in his hair, pulling so hard that it felt as if strands were being torn out. The stinging pain in his eyes was accompanied by the bright yellow stars that had scratched at them during his tears. Warm blood pooled in his hands, mingling with those cursed stars. However, the most painful experience was waking up to a void of darkness, hearing the doctor say he would never see again. He would never witness his mother's smile or the steam rising from his favorite dish. Katsuki was furious. He could not believe Izuku had the audacity to show up in front of him, holding someone else's hand as if he had confessed first. Katsuki noticed the tight grip Izuku had on the other boy's hand, the trembling of his shoulders, and his heavy breathing. But what infuriated Katsuki the most was the cane Izuku was holding. For a moment, he seriously thought Izuku was blind. The glasses covering his eyes and the faint pink scars beneath them only added to Katsuki's anger. He believed Izuku was merely trying to make him feel guilty, which he was not. As Katsuki fumed in the dorm living room, his friends approached him, looking at him as if he were a ticking time bomb. Kirishima, undeterred, casually placed his arm on Katsuki's shoulder and asked if he was okay. Katsuki glared at him as if he had been punched. He shouted that it was obvious he was not okay, expressing his rage about Izuku's presence and how he acted as if he owned the place. Kirishima raised his hands in defense, reminding Katsuki that such behavior was not very manly. Mina then pointed out that Izuku was blind, raising an eyebrow at Katsuki's reaction. Katsuki demanded to know how she could possibly know that. Mina explained that she knew the boy Izuku was holding hands with. His name was Denki Kaminari, and he was deaf. They both attended a special school for individuals with disabilities. Mina continued, explaining that Denki had lost his confidence in becoming a hero after losing his hearing, which led him to that school where he met Izuku. She revealed that Izuku had lost his eyesight due to a condition called star tears, which caused him immense pain whenever he faced rejection. Katsuki listened, feeling a mix of disbelief and anger. Mina urged him not to jump to conclusions, warning that it would only lead to pain and distrust before walking away, leaving Katsuki speechless. That night, Katsuki lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He reflected on the last time he had seen Izuku, the last time he had touched him. Izuku had never lifted his head to look at him, even when Katsuki had been pulling at his hair. Katsuki frowned, recalling what Mina had said about the disease. He remembered the name, star tears. He got up, grabbed his phone, and searched for information about the condition. As he read about the pain of scratching at the eyes and the despair of never seeing light again, he felt pity for those who suffered from it. He thought of Izuku and the way Mina had described his struggles. It made Katsuki's heart feel heavy. He realized he was the reason Izuku was blind. Reflecting on how he had treated Izuku during their last encounter, he remembered the glossy eyes that had met his own. He had never seen the stars until that moment, when he had dragged Izuku along, too consumed by his anger to care. Suddenly he felt a strong urge to see Izuku, to apologize, but he questioned whether he had the right to do so. He had caused Izuku so much pain, nothing, not even giving up his dream of becoming the #1 hero, could make up for his wrongdoings. Meanwhile, Izuku did not sleep that night, knowing he would likely have nightmares about that day or about Katsuki in general. He would never forgive Katsuki, even if it was not entirely his fault. Katsuki should have known better. He should have stopped when he saw Izuku trembling in pain. Izuku felt no guilt blaming Katsuki for his suffering and never would. He did, however, feel guilty for wishing that Katsuki would fail as a hero and never become the #1 hero. Morning arrived quickly, prompting Izuku to get up and dress. He navigated his room carefully, having memorized every corner of the house. On a Saturday morning, Izuku went for a walk and unexpectedly bumped into Katsuki. It was 5 a.m., and Izuku had developed a habit of going outside early when no one else was around. His mother had suggested getting a service dog to assist him, but he had declined, preferring solitude in his own world. However, that morning he reconsidered. Katsuki was lost in thought, contemplating how to apologize to Izuku while jogging with music blaring in his ears. His red eyes caught sight of familiar red shoes and a long stick. Slowing down, he looked up and saw the green-haired boy he had been thinking about. Izuku was tapping his stick, feeling his way as he walked. He paused when he tapped something that felt like a shoe. He quietly asked if anyone was there, sensing a flinch and the sound of shuffling feet. A familiar voice apologized for getting in the way. Izuku whispered Katsuki's name, trembling slightly. Katsuki responded softly, but Izuku froze, unable to reconcile this gentler version of Katsuki with the abusive and loud person he remembered. He asked what Katsuki wanted, tears already forming in his eyes. Katsuki simply looked at him, truly looking at him for the first time. Katsuki looked at Izuku, noting that he appeared unchanged since their last encounter. He still had his youthful face, complete with chubby cheeks and his signature freckles, though his eyes were hidden behind sunglasses. Katsuki could see faint scars on Izuku's skin, a soft pink hue that hinted at the pain he had endured. Behind those glasses were eyes that had suffered greatly, and Katsuki could only imagine the horror of that day. A frown crossed his face as he realized he was the cause of Izuku's suffering, a realization that weighed heavily on him. As Katsuki struggled to process his emotions, he barely heard Izuku's response. Katsuki felt compelled to speak, wanting to share his feelings. He expressed his sorrow, acknowledging the hurt he had caused. He did not seek forgiveness, understanding that the actions of his past self had inflicted deep wounds. He admitted his regret for being the reason behind Izuku's blindness, wishing he could take it all back but knowing he could not. He knelt down, resting his head against Izuku's shoes, his hands gently placed on Izuku's ankles. Despite the tears that threatened to fall, he held them back, feeling he did not deserve to cry. Izuku stood still, absorbing Katsuki's words. Tears began to fall from his own eyes as he processed the weight of their conversation. He leaned down, offering a gentle pat on Katsuki's back, acknowledging the truth of their situation. He admitted that forgiveness was not something he could grant at that moment. While he had been on the path to forgiving Katsuki, the events of their past loomed large. He recognized that Katsuki's attitude had changed in many ways, but not toward him. Izuku understood that someone must have told Katsuki about the incident, as the animosity had not completely faded. Even if he were to forgive Katsuki, fear lingered, a fear that Katsuki might lash out again. Izuku urged Katsuki not to carry guilt for the rest of his life, as it would only bring pain to both of them. Katsuki remained on his knees, tears streaming down his face as he accepted Izuku's words. He promised to honor Izuku's request, even if it was difficult. Izuku, sensing the moment had come for him to leave, mentioned that perhaps they could meet again in the future. Katsuki agreed, wiping his tears away as he stood up. They exchanged a final acknowledgement of their parting, both aware that this was goodbye for now. 8 years passed since that day. Katsuki had dedicated himself to fundraising for individuals with disabilities and those without quirks. As the #1 hero, he kept track of Izuku's life from a distance. He learned that Izuku had married a man named Shoto Todoroki, and the wedding photos were appealing. While Katsuki sometimes wished for a different outcome, he pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on his relationship with Kirishima. They had been together for a while, and Katsuki felt content with where he was in life, knowing that Izuku was also finding happiness.